on today's episode of All About Life with Danielle Brown.
And after our first miscarriage, I had a dream. And in that dream, God vividly said, I am going to give you a baby. Okay, God, you promised me a baby, but I just lost our second baby. Why? I was at a point where I needed to question God and I needed to know what my relationship with him was and what, where the truth lied.
Walk us through, we talked about your relationship with your husband, but more importantly, right? Like how this affected your relationship with Jesus and where you're at now.
Yeah. So it definitely, it was a whirlwind of kind of this roller coaster with Jesus, honestly. After, I went into having trying for babies with God put this desire on my heart to be a mom, and God doesn't make promises he doesn't keep. That was my mindset, and that was totally my mindset of, well, if God put the calling on my heart, God will fulfill the calling. I've seen him do it before, I've seen him do it in others. It's going to happen. After our first miscarriage, and I don't audibly hear from God all the time. That's not a spiritual gift of mine. That's not how God and I communicate. I very much am take me to a mountaintop and just let me sit and worship music. And that's when I hear the Lord the most. There's been very few times in my life that I've audibly heard Jesus speak to me.
Yeah.
And after our first miscarriage, I had a dream. And in that dream, God vividly said, I am going to give you a baby. And this was the beginning of end of February, beginning of March 2021, we got pregnant and we miscarried. And it was okay, God, you promised me a baby, but I just lost our second baby. Why would you promise me that and then take it away as quickly as you promised? And I got very angry, very doubtful in God, and very I didn't want to believe anything that anyone said about him. I didn't want to believe promises. I didn't want to believe truth. It was God made me a promise and he took it away the minute that it came true. I got pregnant, his promise fulfilled, and I lost it. And it really did put me at this place of questioning and really just figuring out where my faith lied and what I believed. And I think I was very discouraged at first because I kind of had been told growing up not to question the Lord, not to question my faith, not to deconstruct if you must. But I was at a point where I needed to question God and I needed to know what my relationship with him was and what, where the truth lied. And so I did. I started to question God, and not in a God, are you real sense, but in a God, why? Why would you allow this? Why would you do this? Why make promises that you're not going to keep? And through that, it really did, it kind of tore me further from the Lord in the beginning because I was having such a hard time believing any truth. And then it brought me closer to him because I started to realize, God was not killing my babies. God was not taking them from me. God allowed my miscarriages to happen. Unfortunately, because sin and free will entered this world, and a part of that entering was death. And, we see it throughout the Bible, babies dying as well. And that was never a promise that God said babies will not die. We never were given that. And unfortunately, that was a part of my walk with the Lord, was having to, go through that and having to still trust him and having to know that while he might not have willed it to happen, he allowed it to happen because he knew the bigger picture that I didn't know. And he knew that there still could be life brought from losing 2 babies, and that there still could be good from such a terrible, broken situation. And so after our second miscarriage, I had kind of a second run in with the Lord, and I just heard him say, I promised you a baby, but not that baby. It is coming. Continue to wait. And it was kind of just this like confirmation after questioning everything of like, okay, it really is not my timeline to write, and it is not my story to finish. It is not my happy ending that I get to decide when and how it happens, but it is up to the Lord. And I have to trust that something is being written for his kingdom. And, you know, it was really hard to trust that, but he opened the doors for our fertility clinic, and he opened so many doors. And now some of my best friends in this world I met because I shared about my miscarriages, and because I was open on Instagram about IUI, infertility, miscarriage, loss, getting pregnant after a miscarriage, and how hard and brutal it is mentally and physically. And I was open about struggling with the Lord, and I was open about having those moments with the Lord. And it brought so many women into my life who I still get messages today. If you didn't share your story, I would feel alone. If you didn't share your story, I wouldn't share mine. If you hadn't have shared your story, I wouldn't have known to advocate for myself, and things like that, that I do see the goodness of a broken situation. And I do see God's hand willing good to come from something that he allowed to happen. And, you know, seeing that he created a beautiful, beautiful community, and, you know, just so many women and such a strong force to be reckoned with out of these broken situations. And, you know, at the end of the day, he did bring us our girl that we're about to have. And he also gave me a much deeper understanding of love and grief and loss, and also what it means to fully and like wholeheartedly carry your cross while allowing Jesus to continue helping you, and allowing him to pave the way for that carrying of the cross, and allowing him to guide you and follow without just being blind, and without just being like nothing good is coming from this, like blah blah, but being like, I trust you and I surrender, and waiting for the goodness to come will be worth it. And so it was very, very difficult, but now it's to a point where it's like, I can't believe this happened. Like, I can't believe that he got me through it. And I can't believe that he was so gracious and kind to me, even when I was like, God, I hate you. God, like, you're failing me. Like, God, you gave me a broken body. God, you have like completely abandoned me. God, you have forsaken me. And he was there the entire time of just like, I've got a plan, and like, I've got you, and I've given you the equipment you need, and I need you to hold on a little bit longer. And it really was this like, how much longer can I hold on to a string that's about to break between me and the Lord? And God really was kind of just like mending that string and making it stronger without me even realizing that he was doing it. And the next thing I know, he is fulfilling every promise, and he is fulfilling things that I didn't even know needed to be fulfilled. Yeah. So it was a wild journey, and it was heartbreaking, and it was full of questioning, but it got us here, and it got me to such a better place. So it was worth it.
Oh, you know what this reminds me of is like when we cry, God catches every tear in his hand. Like, that's how much he cares and loves for us. And like you said, he didn't kill your babies, but he allowed it to happen. And I believe that broke God's heart. Like, Jesus wept for your babies, Jesus wept for you, but used you to further his kingdom. It is so encouraging to hear how you've been open and vulnerable about sharing your experience and what's going on in your life to create this community. There's so much power in sharing realness. I mean, that's like the whole of, this show is just to create a community where like we can be real and connect and have community. And you're like, if I would have never shared, or if this would have ever happened to me, which you're like, if I go back, no, I wouldn't want to do this, but God used it, right? And like, I'm stronger, our relationship is stronger. He like willed that to happen. And now so many other women's lives are better, or I don't want to say easier, but like at least they feel like not alone, I think, ooh, I'm getting chills just thinking of like serious life change, honestly, like, so tell me, this has been on my mind because you really went through it, like the ish, to get pregnant and to have and to carry and to hold your baby. Tell me what that moment was like on top of the mountain, which I think is your happy place, right? Like you mentioned, set me on top of the mountain, give me some worship music, and I feel Jesus. And is that coincidence or not, that's where you're like, oh my gosh, we're pregnant? Tell me about that moment of it worked. There's a
baby. My husband and I were moving from Colorado to Georgia because, we had decided that it was time to be with family again, and that we had gone through enough on our own that we needed to go through a season of life close to our family. And mine's in Georgia, his is in Florida. So it was kind of perfect. And my dad had flown out to Colorado to help us move. But it ended up that I had a wedding in Glacier National Park. So on like July 20th, we flew from Colorado to Montana with my dad. And then the wedding was the 21st, flew back the 22nd, and started driving on the 23rd to head back to Georgia. And the doctors had told me, like, on July 21st, take a pregnancy test. If it's positive, call us because we'll need you to come in for blood work. If it's negative, call us when you get your period. And so I had told my dad and my husband, Taylor, I was like, I'm going to take a test when we get back from Montana, because if it's negative, I don't want to ruin our trip. Like, my dad's never been to Glacier, neither had my husband. I really wanted it to be special, beautiful. I didn't want to be sad the whole trip. But I packed a few pregnancy tests anyway. And on July 20th, on our way to Glacier, we were in the Denver airport. Our flight had been postponed, like delayed. Our gate had been changed like 4 times. And if you know the Denver airport, it's big.
Yikes.
It's not quick walks to and from. And our gate was like the farthest gate on the B terminal. And then it got moved to the farthest on the other end. Then it got moved to the A terminal, and then the C terminal, and then back to the B terminal. And like, it had been where we had walked to the new gate, sat down, and then got a notification to move again. So I was so fed up. I was so annoyed. I was like feeling super sick because I hadn't been eating. We had been running through the airport. And so I told my husband, I was like, I'm just going to go to the bathroom and like freshen up, change, put on deodorant, open the suitcase. And I saw the pregnancy test. And I was like, why not? Like, let's take it. Like, and so I texted my best friend and I was like, peeing in the airport on a test, ha ha ha, prob's going to be negative. And within like seconds of my pee touching the stick, a line popped up, like a second line. Like, there's always going to be one line, but a second line popped up within seconds of peeing on the stick. And I had never seen a positive test that quickly. Yeah. And so I'm just sitting in the bathroom stall, like shaking by myself in an airport. No one's in the bathroom with me that I know. And I'm just like shaking, like taking a photo of it. I shove it in my camera backpack. and don't say anything. Walk back out to my husband and dad, and I'm just like, are we boarding? Sit there the whole flight, don't say anything. We get to Montana, we go to a brewery, and my dad and husband are like, you don't want a beer? And I'm like, no, like, just in the case that I'm pregnant, like, I'd rather not risk it, you know. But I knew I was pregnant at that point, and I knew that we were going on a sunrise hike that next morning with my dad. And so I was like, I'll just wait. I'll take another one tomorrow morning to confirm. And then I'll tell my dad and my husband. So I did. My body naturally woke up at like 2:30 a.m. that morning, even though we needed to be like up at like 3. So I was up, the guys weren't. So I went in the bathroom, I took a digital test, and within like seconds, the word pregnant pops up. And I'm just in the bathroom, like bawling my eyes out. I turned the shower on so that my husband and dad couldn't hear me crying. So I have the shower running. I'm sobbing my eyes out. I'm like sending my mom a video of the test, sobbing, pull myself together, collect myself. We drive the hour into the park. We start hiking. I'm really nauseous at this point, hiking at 5 a.m., like sunrise, and also just hiking at high altitude. I'm like out of breath and dying. And we get to this like overlook, and you know, we're like, oh, let's take photos, like things like that. So I find a couple and I'm just like, hey, can you take a photo for us? But you know, when my dad and husband walked out to the rock, I was like, can you actually video it? Like, I'm telling them I'm pregnant. And so this couple videoed it for us. And you know, I was just like, okay, 1, 2, 3, say Hailey's pregnant. And it's like 5 a.m. and both my dad and my husband are like they don't say anything for like 5 seconds. They're both just like processing what I said.
Did she just say that?
And they're both just shocked. And in the video, you see both of their eyes just like widen. And then they look at each other and they look at me. And I'm like, I'm pregnant. And I walk away to grab the pregnancy test out of my bag. And like my dad high fives my husband and is like, let's go. And I give the test to my husband and he just starts bawling because it says pregnant on it. You know, it's not just 2 lines. It says the word pregnant. And something that we didn't think we'd see again. And it, by that point, a crowd had accumulated that we hadn't noticed accumulated. So at that point, like we're hugging, we're both sobbing, people are cheering and clapping, and we're like, wait, did someone get engaged? Why are you clapping? And we notice that they're like,
oh, it's me.
Yeah, they're like clapping for us. And we're like, oh my God, you know, my dad's crying. And it really was this just like surreal. It didn't feel real. And honestly, it felt like I was dreaming. And I know that's cliche, but like it literally felt like I was dreaming all this and I was going to wake up and take a test and it be negative. And so, you know, all throughout the day, I just kept rewatching the video and I kept looking at the pregnancy test and I kept reminding myself that it was real. And then the panic kind of set in of like, oh my gosh, I am pregnant.
Yeah.
What do we do to not lose this one? Yeah. And, you know, my husband was like, should you be hiking? Like, are you okay? Like, do we need to rest? Do you need water? Do you need your feet rubbed? Like instantly was like,
feet rubbed.
Like instantly he was like, you know, dad mode, protective of like, let me carry you to the car. No, don't carry that bag. It's too heavy. No, don't eat that. No, we don't know if that's safe. Like instant, just like protective mode. And so from there, you know, we called our doctor today. We were leaving to go to Georgia. So while my dad and husband packed up the U-Haul, I drove to Denver, got my blood work done, and got the call from the clinic. Congrats, you are pregnant. Like your levels are clearly positive. You're pregnant. When you get to Georgia, we're going to have your blood drawn again to make sure that it doubles. So we get to Georgia. The day we get, I go get my blood tested while my husband and dad are unpacking. And they send it to our fertility clinic and they send them the results, not me. So, you know, we're just waiting for the phone call and we get the phone call and they're like, congratulations, like your levels have quadrupled in the amount of time that we wanted them to double, and congrats. And, you know, when you're with a fertility clinic, you graduate from your fertility clinic to an OB. So we did, luckily I still had weddings in Colorado. So we timed our appointments when I was going to be in Colorado. So we had a 6-week and 8-week ultrasound with our fertility clinic before we graduated to our OB here in Georgia. And so, we flew back for that first 6-week ultrasound and just sat there kind of like, okay, we might see something, we might not, let's just not get too excited.
Yeah.
And as soon as they did the ultrasound, the tech was like, there's your baby, like there's its heartbeat, there it is. And my husband just broke down sobbing, completely just like on the bed, holding my hand, sobbing. I was still a little reserved of just like, well, it's still early, we might lose this one too, and my husband is just sobbing, and flew back for the 8-week ultrasound, and we got to like see the heartbeat. It actually kind of started to look like a baby at this point, and we got to see everything, and it was kind of a little bit more confirmation that things were okay. And then we got the call, you're going to an OB, like you no longer need to be with our fertility
Graduated.
clinic. Like, you graduated, congrats, and it is a big deal. And our nurses and our doctor were so amazing of like making it a big deal for us, and crying on the phone with us and making it such a celebratory thing. Yeah. And then that first appointment at the OB, we got to hear the heartbeat, and we got to see like her little arms and legs, and we were about 13 weeks at that point, and it was just kind of, okay, we're kind of in the clear, like we're out of that first trimester, we made it, now let's see where we can make it to next, and things like that. And the fear never really leaves you. So like for me, it was like, okay, second trimester, let's make it to the anatomy scan at 20 weeks. Okay, 20 weeks, can we make it to viability at like 25, 26 weeks? Okay, 26 weeks, can we make it full term? 37 weeks, like, okay, can we make it to birth? And just kind of these fears that when you've had miscarriage and loss, they don't really go away. But it, every day I just remind myself of that moment of finding out we're pregnant with her, and how it did just feel like a promise had been fulfilled, and that everything was going to be okay. And it has been. So yeah.
I have chills. I'm actually glad that you addressed your pregnancy, because I was going to ask if there was always a sense of hesitancy throughout your pregnancy because you had experienced loss, if you felt like that followed you because you were like on the high of being pregnant and you're like, there is a baby, but let me almost not get too excited. Like you said, your first appointment, there might be a heartbeat, there might not. Like you kind of feel like, did you feel like you had to prepare for the worst almost because you had experienced the heartbreak and you wanted to, like, in case it was to come, be prepared? And if so, do you think that, did that take away any from the joy, or was the fact that you had a baby freaking darn joyful enough?
Yeah, no, it definitely, no one really talks about how difficult it is to be pregnant after a miscarriage or a loss. I think women who have not suffered a loss, it's easy to assume that getting pregnant can heal you from a loss, but it doesn't. Like, getting pregnant does not heal the grief of your miscarriage or your loss or your infertility. So it's not easy, it's hard, especially in the first trimester when miscarriage is at its highest risk. That first trimester for me with her was just agonizing. Every twinge, every cramp, everything freaked me out. I literally was like, God, please let me wake up barfing, and from like week, we found out at week 4, from week 4 to week 7, I was not sick. And so every day I was just like, God, please let me throw up. Please let me throw up. Because, that's a typical sign of healthy pregnancy.
Yeah.
And then at 7 weeks, it was like, you wanted to be sick? Here you go.
Got sick.
And morning sickness is not morning, it's all day.
Oh,
I
good to know. Great.
was throwing up all day, every day.
Mm.
I had to get IV fluids multiple times during the first trimester because I was so dehydrated. But that still wasn't enough to confirm for me that she was okay. And, you go 2 or 3, sometimes 4 weeks between doctor's appointments. And pretty much up until the third trimester, you're really only seen every few weeks. So you're kind of stuck in this, like, we still have 3 weeks till we see a doctor. I hope she's okay. I hope nothing's changed. I hope her heart doesn't stop beating. And it is tough. Once we hit 13 weeks, my husband and I bought a at home, like, fetal Doppler so that we could hear her heartbeat at home. And that helped a little bit because there were some nights that, I was just like, I don't know why, but I feel so anxious. I feel like something's wrong. And we would just put that on my belly and hear her heartbeat. And it was like, okay, she's okay. And I really disconnected myself from her, from our pregnancy. It was hard for me to get excited telling people that I was pregnant. I didn't announce on social media that I was pregnant until I was about 18 weeks, which most people announce around like the 10 to 12 week mark, kind of end of the first trimester. Hey, we're pregnant. I just couldn't get myself to do that. I was too afraid that if I put it out into the universe, I would also have to put out a post, we lost our third. And so I waited until about 18 weeks to finally announce that I was pregnant. I had announced to, like, my close friends.
Right.
And I made a close friends, like, story on Instagram with like 20 people on it for around week like 15. And then around week 18, I like shared on Facebook and Instagram, we're expecting a baby girl. But I was still so disconnected from it. Still just kind of guarding my heart in the case that something did happen and protecting myself. Okay, well, if I don't get attached to her, then if I lose her, I can't be as hurt because, we haven't named her. I haven't done all this stuff. Like, I'm not attached. And it honestly wasn't until I started really feeling her kick and move that it kind of broke my walls down. And I was just like, holy crap, I've never felt a baby kick me or move on the inside. I've never been here. I've never experienced this. I should have experienced it twice, but I haven't. And it kind of, I think it was her way of breaking my walls down and being like, hey, mom, like, I'm okay. Like, I am here and I am healthy and I am not going anywhere. Please, let me in. And it really did break my walls down. And I found myself just every day, like, just hands on my belly every day, just feeling her and, crying over feeling her and allowing myself, to call her by her name and to call her my daughter and to joyfully tell people when they ask, like, how far along are you? I'd be like, oh, I'm 25 weeks, like, happy about it rather than reserved and kind of like, oh, we're only 20 weeks, like, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm 20 weeks, like, yes, like, things like that, like, we're halfway there. And I did allow myself to get attached, and now I can't even imagine how much I'm going to love her when she's here from how much I love her now. And it is funny, like, she knows already that, like, I need her and she needs me. And she reminds me of that constantly with her kicks and reminds me constantly, like, I'm okay. I'm here. Like, you're about to meet me. Quit worrying. Like, I'm here. We made it. We're full term. We made it. And it was a really hard journey to get to that point of happiness with pregnancy. And pregnancy after loss is not this cupcakes and celebrating and rainbow, everything that people, your rainbow baby, she's our double rainbow baby. And it's not rainbows and butterflies. It's every single time you go to the bathroom, you check the toilet paper to make sure you're not bleeding. Every single time you cramp, you call your doctor. Every single time you go 10 minutes without feeling her kick, you're whipping out a fetal monitor. You're trying to get her to move. You're trying to get them to kick you. Every time you get sick, you're making sure that it's healthy sick and not bad for her. You're double checking ingredients, you're double checking what you're drinking, you're double checking your weight, you're double checking her weight, you're looking at the ultrasound photos every single day to remind yourself that they're there. And it's not easy, and it's not, people don't love talking about how hard it is, because you fought so hard to get your rainbow baby or your double rainbow, whatever, and you fought so hard to get them that you kind of feel guilt and shame when you don't love being pregnant with them, because you went through so much, you fought so hard to get them. You should be so thrilled to be pregnant, but yet you're sitting here crying yourself to bed every night, worried if they're okay. You're sitting here sobbing on the bathroom floor, praying that you would throw up. You're sitting here freaking out because you wiped and there was half a drop of blood. And you kind of feel this guilt and shame of like, I'm not happy, I'm not thankful, I am scared out of my mind, and I am worried and I'm anxious. And it does take adjusting. It does take a lot of healing, which is why I say, like, getting pregnant does not heal your miscarriages, and or your infertility or your loss. It kind of amplifies all the fears because you're going through it again, and you're going through the possibility of another loss, and you're setting yourself up for what you believe could be a bad outcome, even though you know that you're already there and that it is a good outcome. And so it is hard, and it is a roller coaster. And there are still days, that I'm 37 weeks and I still have bad dreams about losing her or things like that. That is just kind of engraved in the back of my mind. That doesn't happen a lot, but every now and then it creeps in there, and it lets itself be known that there's still fear, and there's still, until she is in my arms, there is still going to be that fear and trauma from our first two. And that's something that I don't want women to think they're alone or think that they're crazy for feeling that way, because it's hard and it's true, and it can feel lonely. The infertility part can feel lonely, and then the pregnancy part can feel lonely and can feel like no one relates to you, because you feel guilty for sharing how unhappy and how unexcited you are, because you're detaching yourself to protect yourself. And that's not something that women openly share. And that is something that I tried to openly share, so that women knew they could talk to me, or that they weren't alone, things like that. And yeah, here we are now, and it's still scary, but I'm confident that she's okay, and I'm confident that we're here, and I'm confident that we're about to have her in our arms. And so that makes it okay, and that makes it, better for me to go through. So yeah.
Ooh, Hailey, you're preaching. You're preaching. Just to hear the vulnerability and the realness, especially for someone like me, like I haven't gone through that, and to hear like what it's actually like, and I can't even imagine actually feeling that and going through that, but just like how open of like you're checking if there's blood every time you wipe, or you're like praying to get morning sickness and then you get it and it's all day sickness, and there's this constant fear, which like logically that makes so much sense. Like, of course, like you've experienced that, and so you're not only trying to protect yourself, but you have so much maybe pressure and anxiety to protect your baby, because you're like, I have you now, and I I'm going to do everything to
right. And like, I'm going
be
to
healthy.
fight so hard for you
Yeah.
that it might be debilitating to me, but I'm gonna do it, you know? And two, it's just, you think about what you should have had with your pregnancies that you lost. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to miss out on that with this one. I'm going to fight for that, you know. And I look back on both of our pregnancies and I'm like, we should have gotten to this point with our first two babies and we didn't. So what can I do to try and make sure we get there with this one, and things like that. And you know, now we're at the point where it's no longer what can I do, like we're there. And now it's like, okay, once she's here, how can we continue to remember our first two babies, and how can we share with her about her first two siblings, and how can we like have those memories while celebrating new life, while also celebrating that, you know, she did not make us parents, her first two siblings made us parents, and we now want to celebrate that rather than letting it continue to make us hurt and continue to dictate how I do things. And it's now, okay, let's celebrate their lives and let's celebrate her life. And, you know, we have names for both of our first two, and let's continue to tell her about them and continue to tell other people about them and share their story and share our story.
So stinking beautiful. And you're talking about siblings. I have to ask you,
Yeah.
for the moms, non-moms, I guess is what I am, listening to what you guys have been through. You had two babies that you lost. You're about to give birth for the first time and hold a baby. What does the future look like for you guys? I know this is really early to be asking about a second, but you mentioned you always wanted to be a mom and you wanted kiddos. Are you scared to start this journey again? Are you like, heck no, Bruno, we've already, you know, we know what to expect and let's try it again. What does that look like? Not to take away again from
it definitely
about to have a baby, but
I mean, we've talked about it though. Like, it definitely is something you talk about. I'm going to be honest, I hate being pregnant. Most women, morning sickness ends around 12 weeks, 14, 16 weeks. I am 37 weeks and I still throw up. I've only had about 3 weeks in pregnancy of not throwing up the entire pregnancy. I do not love being pregnant. It is not, I just don't love it. But you know, it is beautiful. It is bringing us a baby, so it's worth it. Everyone says you forget about how terrible it is, so I'm hoping that's the case. But
I don't think so.
You know, ultimately we have always said that we would love 3 of our own and to adopt a 4th, because both my husband and I have always like kind of had a feeling of wanting to adopt eventually. We, you know, after going through all this, now it's kind of, if we can have 3 of our own, God willing, like we would love that. If not, you know, then we'll adopt and we'll go into foster care and things like that. But we would love 4 total and kind of have an even number. I come from 3, you know, I have a brother and a sister. My husband has just one brother. So we were like, okay, we like the even number of 4. Everyone has a friend, a playmate. And so, you know, for us, so we will, when we decide to try again, we will have to go get all of my levels retested and see if having a full-term pregnancy leveled out my hormones and if I'm able to ovulate normally. And if I am, then we'll be able to try naturally to get pregnant. If my levels have not leveled back out, then we'll have to go through fertility treatments again for our future kids. So, you know, we will have to kind of plan for our next one, with getting retested and everything. But ultimately we would love 4. If we can have, you know, 2 more of our own and then adopt a 4th one, or 1 more of our own and adopt 2, you know, That's kind of like our plan for right now, but you never know, we might get twins the next pregnancy and I only have to be pregnant one more time and then we have 3 of our own. So, we don't know what that's going to look like for us, but we do know that we want more. And we kind of are thinking like 2 years, 2.5 years between them. That way they're still close enough in age to be friends, but not like Irish twins right on top of each other. So that's kind of what we're thinking, and like what we're hoping for.
I am hoping and praying for this sweet babe and for
Yes.
birth, and that goes well. I'm praying for your future family. I'm also praying for all the women, whether they've gone through this or not, whether they listen to this and then they do whatever it is, like just woman to woman. It's like, I feel for you. Like my heart breaks for the process and what it took, but like also like how empowering, you mentioned this at the very beginning, like I fought for myself, I fought for my body, I fought for my baby. Your little girl, there's no doubt, like she's gonna be like, oh my gosh, I was so wanted, so loved, so cherished, not just because of your pregnancy journey, but because y'all are gonna be rock star parents and you're an awesome mom already. But I am just so thankful for you, for your vulnerability, for sharing. I'm thankful for the women that get to listen in on this and relate or just learn. I feel like I've learned so much from you. So thank you, Hailey, for your time, for your experience and willing to share like the details and be getting in it and vulnerable. And of course, for getting real.